Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Chad Harberts Show. I'm John J.D. Gunderson, and I'm pinch hitting for Chad today. He's out on assignment for the Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier. And I'm excited because on this show, we interview former athletes, coaches, ADs from the state of Iowa. I've got a guest on today who played at a very high level at Linn-Mar High School at Ohio State. Scott Anderson. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks, JD.
So let's just dive right in. Why don't we start with, give us your background, where you played high school, where you played college, what got you involved in the sport?
Sounds good. In terms of what got me involved in the sport, my dad was a basketball coach. So I grew up in Newton, Iowa, and my dad was a basketball coach at Newton High School. And so all the cliches that go with being the son of a coach. I grew up playing, I had an older brother, who was less than 2 years older than me. So we were always out on the driveway playing basketball. So just grew up in that environment. And then we moved to Marion when I was in sixth grade. And a teammate of mine at Ohio State, John Anderson, and Todd Lumsden, who was Mr. Basketball, all three of us moved into Marion within about a year and a half time frame. So we had a lot of guys moving in and had some success at Linn-Mar, won the state championship my junior year, and went to some camps after that, went to five-star camp out in Pittsburgh, and then went to BC camp down in, actually was in, I think it was Milledgeville, Georgia, of all places. Traveled down there to that camp and got noticed by some schools at those, and the recruiting took off at that point and ended up getting an opportunity to play at Ohio State. And so had a 4-year career there, got my degree in finance and insurance and risk management, and moved back, took a job with what is now Transamerica, met my wife, been married now 30 years this year, have 2 daughters. They live in Iowa City, Macy and her husband, Luke, and then my other daughter, Jenna, works in Hiawatha at World Class Industries. So we're lucky. Yeah, I get to see the kids a lot, and life is good.
So everybody's back. I'm going to go back a little bit. Right now in Iowa high school sports, there's kids who move school districts make big news. Sounds like you guys were the transfer portal back then. You and John Anderson and Lumsden. It sounds like Linn-Mar basketball back in those glory days was the transfer portal.
Yeah, well, there was no NIL involved, portaling. It just, I think it was our parents' jobs. And it was just ironic that we all ended up in Marion in the Linn-Mar school district. And we were fortunate. We had great coaches. Coach Landis at Linn-Mar was a great coach to play for, ran it, good practices, organized, fun, taught us a lot. But if they say it's not always just about the X's and O's, it's about the Jimmies and Joes too.
Scott, you played in some legendary games. I think people have told me there was one time you played Kennedy in the Cellular Center or whatever they call it, Cedar Rapids today. So talk about some of those who you played in high school.
It was a great time in the Cedar Rapids area for basketball. Linn-Mar, we were really strong. We won state my junior year, where we were 25-0 that year. We won the first 17 games my senior year. So we'd won 42 in a row, and we were number one my senior year. Kennedy, Cedar Rapids Kennedy, that had Al Lorenzen, the Vanilla Gorilla, and Jeff Rubis, Tim Batterson, really good team. They were number 2. And the first time we played them, we played at US Cellular Center, 5-season center back then. And it was a sold out crowd. And they actually beat us in close game. So they became number 1. We were number 2. And back then it wasn't seeded in such a way that number 1 and number 2 would meet in the state championship game if you both made it that far in Des Moines. It was more geographic. So we played Kennedy sub-state before we ever got to Des Moines, even though we were 1 and 2 all year. And so they had that game at Carver Hawkeye Arena. So we actually played at Carver Hawkeye Arena. And quite an experience going from a high school gym to that environment. Was a big change. It was a low scoring game, and they beat us on a buzzer beater and went on to win, I think, pretty easily the state championship that year. It was a lot of fun, a lot of good players in the area, good coaches, great fan support. There were some of the games they would sell tickets for, and their lines, people would get tickets. It was a pretty cool time to be a high school basketball player in the Cedar Rapids area.
Yeah, that's cool. Lorenzen's sons, people follow them in the state. They're going through high school and getting into college now. And Rubus, I think, was Coe's leading scorer. I think his son plays for Coe right now. So
Yeah.
there was some incredible talent. Today, there's no way the state would let you face each other because they would want to sell tickets in Des Moines.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame. It ultimately kind of at that point was the state championship game. It just wasn't in Des Moines. The way the season had gone, the winner of that game would win state, and that's what happened.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of talk about a lot's changed. Talk about you as a parent. What's changed in high school sports? How's the growth of AAU? How do you think the landscape's changed across the state when it comes to high school sports?
Yeah, I graduated from high school in 1984. We played AU, but it was really like a tournament down in Des Moines. We had a team. My dad coached it. We'd go down, play a few games down in Des Moines, and it was a lot of fun. And if you won the state tournament, you got to go to the national tournament. But by far and away, the most important thing was your high school team and high school basketball. That's where you played most of your games. And my daughters were volleyball players, not basketball players, but that club volleyball, like AAU basketball, today is really a bigger thing. You play a lot more games with AAU and club. That's where you get noticed on if you're trying to be recruited because they're going to go to those tournaments. And it seems like that's just a higher priority, a bigger part of things than the high school, and the team you represent in high school is important, but just how many games you play in AAU now and how much involvement that is and how that almost takes precedent in some cases over your school team is a huge change from when I played back in the day.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit. You went to Ohio State. You and John Anderson, both from Linn-Mar High School, both went to Ohio State. Talk a little bit about that experience. Just talk about that journey from, hey, you're going from Newton to Marion to Columbus. That's a pretty big jump.
Yeah, I had a great experience at Ohio State. It was a huge adjustment in terms of the quickness and the speed of the game. And you hear that a lot, but it's totally true for me. It was an adjustment, and I got a chance to get into that guard rotation. Was never a starter at Ohio State, but played a lot of minutes. And my freshman year, we played in the NCAA tournament, and we beat Iowa State actually the first round. That would have been Jeff Hornacek's last game as an Iowa State Cyclone. The second round, we played Louisiana Tech, and they had a guy named Carl Malone on their team. We did not have an answer for him. He was back then more of an inside player, but that was pretty cool. People sometimes ask me, like, who's the best players you ever played against? I would say Carl Malone would certainly be one. The other one I would say was Len Bias. We had a home and away against Maryland when I was at Ohio State. And obviously Maryland wasn't part of the Big Ten at that point, but he was 6'8", athletic, skilled as all get out. And I think he was the number 2 player in the draft. Died tragically before he ever played an NBA game. But I don't know if he would have been Michael Jordan, but he would have been up there with, I think, one of the all-time greats. But he was an unbelievable college player at Maryland. But had a really good experience at Ohio State, a lot of fun. Couple funny stories. I was a big Boston Celtic fan growing up. And when I was at Ohio State, we had an opportunity to play Boston College in the Boston Garden. So that was really cool. It was a CBS game. I think it was on Sunday. And that was the year that everybody was breaking out these really colorful shoes. I tell people they kind of look like bowling shoes, but everybody had them. Iowa had them. We had them, multicolored shoes. And so we had this big game against Boston College in the Garden on CBS. And we decided we're going to break out those new fancy shoes. And we get out there, and I think we should have actually beat them. We had Dennis Hobson, Brad Sellers on our team. We had a really good team, but at halftime, they were up a few points. And we go into the halftime, and Eldon Miller starts laying into the team a little bit and getting us fired up. He looks over, and there's Brad Sellers is untying the new fancy shoes that we broke out for that game and putting on the old shoes that he used to play with. And Eldon's yelling at us. He looks at Brad, he notices that over in the corner, just in disgust. He says, "Brad, it's not the shoes. It's not the effing shoes." And he didn't say effing, but it took a lot to get Eldon that fired up. And we had a lot of fun with that. He still to this day sometimes will just say, "It's not the shoes." But we ended up losing that game, but it was still a cool experience to play in the Boston Garden. Another funny story was I was a third guard in a three-guard rotation with Curtis Wilson and Jay Burson, you may have heard of. And
Yep.
they would start, one would get a breather, I'd go in, the other one would come in for the other one. I played a number of minutes depending on how things were going, and then they were back to the original two. But Curtis had gotten into some foul trouble in a Michigan game, and this was an ESPN game, and Dick Vitale was calling the game. And so I kind of got thrown into some more extended minutes than I was normally playing. And by that point, because the guy one grade ahead of me in Ohio State was Dennis Hopson, and he was the best player at Ohio State that I ever played with. He was a pro, All-American. Just until this year, was leading scorer at Ohio State until Bruce Thornton just broke his record this past season. So we are playing Michigan, and Curtis Wilson gets in foul trouble. So I'm picking up Gary Grant. That's my guy. And I had guarded Dennis Hopson in practice for 2 years. So I felt like, man, if I can guard Dennis, I can guard anybody. So I was checking Gary Grant all the way up the court, picking him up full court. And I think he thought, okay, I can take advantage of this guy. And so there's a couple different plays, but I think I stole the ball once and I blocked one of his shots. And famous line from that broadcast was that Dick Vitale, oh, you're all Rolls Royce. And so he's talking up Gary Grant. Hey, you can't do that to me. I'm a Rolls Roycer. You're just a Volvo. And I'm just a Volvo. But I thought, Volvo, that's pretty good.
That's a safe, dependable car, Scott.
It's not a Yugo. It's not a K car like back in the day. I felt pretty good about it. In fact, my wife drives a Volvo today. I still have that video. It was pretty funny.
That's awesome. Dick Vitale called you a Volvo. Hey, that's one thing. You're not a 6'2" guy.
I like 6'4.5". Probably 6'5" was my program.
6'5". Back in the day, you were a really big guard. And
oh, yeah. Yeah.
The game has really changed.
For sure. Yeah. Now they've got 6'8" point guards. I was more of a 2-guard, more of a shooter coming out of high school. And then I still could shoot it, but I'd say I almost evolved more into a defensive specialist by the end of my career at Ohio State.
You played with some great players. Your teammate, John Anderson there at Linn-Mar, had a great career. He was more of a post player.
That's right. Yep. He was 6'9", big, strong guy, real physical player. So yeah, like even at the high school team at Linn-Mar, there was John. We had 3 or 4 guys that were taller than me. So it was a pretty big team for back in 1984 in Iowa.
I love those stories. And then after that, you came back and you joined the family business, run Anderson Financial Services, headquartered in Cedar Rapids.
That's right. Yeah, I've been a financial advisor. I originally came back and worked for the Transamerica headquarters and then joined my father, who was an advisor in the early 90s. So really been doing that for 35 years now in terms of being a financial advisor in Cedar Rapids. And it's been a good career. It's been a lot of fun, meet a lot of people that way, get a chance to help a lot of people. And it's been a rewarding career.
I appreciate your perspective on how high school athletics has changed. It's really interesting how you talk to someone who like, hey, I got noticed at a camp. Today, you're noticed in 9th grade and 8th grade. It's a accumulation of all those visits you take. So AAU in everything but football has become the primary recruiting area for young men and women in the state. I think that's a really interesting perspective. Now we get to the fun question, and it's going to be a little tough because I'm still wrapping my head around Scott Anderson's a Volvo. So if you're a Volvo, this next question might be a little interesting because if you're a Volvo, your places to eat might be a little more plain, would be my thought, than being a Rolls Royce.
Yeah.
So they're based kind of right off of 42nd Street up there in Cedar Rapids, between Xavier and Cedar Rapids Kennedy, which those two schools are very close together if you haven't been in Cedar Rapids before. We're coming up for a high school basketball game at either place. Where would you recommend we go out to get a bite to eat? And then at those places to eat, what's your go-to, Scott?
Ooh, I would say if you're going to be in that area, and you're right, those high schools are, a half a mile apart. They're not very far apart at all. There's a place called Zeppelin's, and I would recommend that. It's just off Edgewood Road, probably about the same distance from both schools, maybe a little closer to Xavier. But they have a happy hour every day, 3 to 6. Very good food. It's always good. My go-to there is the Voodoo chicken sandwich. I like the Voodoo chicken sandwich, but they have great sandwiches. I would recommend Zeppelin's. Yeah, really good beer selection, cool vibe in there. And that would be my recommendation if you're in the area going to a ball game.
I've been in that place before, a really good place. I think that's a good choice. Voodoo chicken.
Voodoo chicken.
Got a little,
I get the
got a little pop to it, I would
jalapenos.
think.
Yeah, I get the jalapenos on the side because I don't like that much heat. They can be quite hot. Get the jalapenos on the side.
I love the stories, and it's really interesting to hear. I had no idea that you played a high school game in Carver Hawkeye. I've always heard about that legendary Linn-Mar Kennedy game. I thought it was in the Five Seasons Center, but that must have been a heck of an experience to come in there and have a full Carver Hawkeye to watch a high school basketball game.
It was pretty cool. And the Carver was pretty new back then. I'd been in it. I think I'd been to a couple games in that, but just that background, even back then, like Regis High School, which is now combined with Xavier, but we didn't have those square backboards even back then. We had the fan shaped backboard, just the whole different look. Usually you're used to a wall right behind the basket, and then the floor being portable, like it didn't bounce the same. It was just all so much different. And then you're in such a big game, so many people. I would say it was a very cautious game. And I think the final score was 39-37. It was super low scoring game. Probably not particularly well played, honestly, by either team, maybe because of all of that. But I did come down. They hit a shot right at the buzzer, and all of a sudden, my high school career was over. It was just like a shock, but they were good guys, and they went on to win it. So felt pretty good about that. Pretty cool. It's a shame that wasn't down in Des Moines that we played that game. But
I really appreciate you being on the show and coming on and talking about your career and how you came from Newton to Linn-Mar all the way through up to Ohio State. I know you're the most hardcore Buckeye fan that I know. You live it, eat it, sleep it, drink it, because you were probably living in the athletic dorms at the time.
That's right. Yeah. In fact, my freshman year, it was all the athletes are in one dorm, but right across the hall was Chris Spielman. So he lived next room right across the hall. We became pretty good friends and played a lot of euchre together. And then Chris Carter was on the floor below me. So he's a Hall of Famer. Tom Tupa, who great punter, quarterback in the NFL. He's trivia note. He scored the first 2-point conversion in NFL history was Tom Tupa, if you didn't know that. Jeff Uhlenhake, starting center for the Dolphins for Dan Marino when he was quarterback there for quite a while. So that's one of the best things I think about going to Ohio State. I made a great experience while I was there, but the gift that keeps giving is the opportunity to be a fan and all the fun, the Final Fours and national championship game with Greg Oden and Mike Conley and that group, and great following the football team. I'm a huge football fan as well. So yeah, I've been pretty fortunate to have a good school to root for all these years, and hopefully that will continue, that they'll continue to have success. It seems like things are leveling out a little bit in the NIL portal area where teams can't just hoard talent maybe like they used to. But I think they'll always still be pretty competitive. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm not going to predict the future, but I would say the NIL budget that Ohio State has is going to keep near the top. That would be my guess. It's unmatched passion. Ohio State is the state team. They're like Iowa without another competitive team, like Iowa with no Iowa State. Every single person in that state pretty much breathes Buckeye football.
That's true. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, there's a lot of other colleges, but no other really big time program like Ohio State there. So they get all the attention and
Yep. And they got a lot more people. So, hey, Scott, I really appreciate it. It was great to have you on. Have a great rest of the week and really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, JD.